Maryland football should be receiving top 25 votes.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. I think that the Maryland Terrapins should be receiving top 25 votes at this point in time. So the new poll came out, and of course you look at it, and Georgia is at number one, and some of these high-level teams that you would expect. Ohio State's number 2, Texas 3, Bama 4, Notre Dame with a huge wins at 5, Ole Miss 6, Oregon drops, whatever the case may be. But I think that the Terps should be receiving top 25 votes. I did not say the Terps should be in the top 25, but for us to have 0 votes doesn't feel right. I think that the first game at UConn kind of proved that a lot of people kind of underrated what Coach Loxley has built at Maryland. A lot of people haven't understood what Coach Loxley has built at Maryland. A lot of people thought we were going to be dead. Like the Maryland football team, I listened to so many different things, and it was a lot of sharp type of bettors and those types of people. A lot of those people had us under our win total. Like a ton of money was under Maryland's win total and all those different things. And yeah, it's way too early for me to be like, this team is going to be great. This team has a chance to be really good. But I do think that we should have some type of top 25 vote after the week 1 win against UConn. Am I overreacting? Yeah, probably a little bit. But still, I think that when I look at teams getting votes, I don't see why the Terrapins should not be. I think that a lot of people just think that we kind of took a huge drop back since Talia's gone. But I think people saw in week 1 with Billy Edwards that we got something with Billy Edwards. He can do things that even Talia couldn't do. Can he throw the ball as consistently as Talia? Probably not, but he's going to make up for it with some power throws and using his legs. So it's a little bit different of a Maryland Terrapins team. It's a little bit more quarterback run probably in these next couple of weeks. It's less about dropping back and throwing 50 times. It's a little bit more Roman Hemby, a little bit more Nolan Ray. But I think that when you go through our roster and when you look at some teams that are receiving top 25 votes, I don't see a bunch of teams that are just better than Maryland. And here's the thing. The first couple weeks of the polls, they don't really matter. These things will fluctuate like crazy. These things will change like crazy. And so you kind of just have to be patient. But there's teams getting votes that I'm like, okay, like, sure, like, I guess, like, West Virginia's getting 2 votes after just getting slapped by Penn State. I know that Penn State's a really powerful team, and I can't be a hypocrite. Maryland's gotten slapped by Penn State multiple times, but West Virginia didn't look great in that game. And I know preseason, a lot of people thought West Virginia could be a sneaky team to do some stuff potentially, but they didn't look really that great. Appalachian State is receiving 3 votes. Like, I guess, like, why are they better than Maryland? I feel like if we played them at a neutral site or at Appalachian State, I feel like that's a game we could potentially win. Colorado's receiving 1 vote. Yeah, they beat North Dakota State, but still, like, that's not something that I'm like, oh my gosh. And so when I look at some of these teams that are receiving votes, Nebraska, what's all this hype on about Nebraska? I know they have a freshman quarterback that is really cool, and Dylan Raiola. He's legit like a Patrick Mahomes clone. I don't know if you guys have seen those memes, but he's like actually just like a Patrick Mahomes clone. It's kind of funny, but Dylan Raiola looks really good for them. But still, is their teams that much better than us? They haven't been that good in the Big Ten the last couple of years. Why are they already receiving all these votes? So I'm not saying Maryland should be a top 25 team. Do I think after we beat Michigan State, do I think we'll be a top 25 team? I think we have a pretty good opportunity depending on how things shake up. There's some really big games next week in college football. Texas plays Michigan. Colorado plays Nebraska, which is a really interesting game. But when I think some of this stuff shakes out, if it goes our way, if we beat Michigan State, not only should we be receiving votes, we should be hovering towards the top 25, depending on how we beat Michigan State. It's a weird Michigan State team. It's a lot of new. I said we get Michigan State early. We get Michigan State before their quarterback gets in a rhythm, before their head coach who came from Oregon State really is able to completely establish what he wants to build. I've always said that we get them at the right spot, and I do believe that we got Michigan State in the right spot. So I do think that we have a chance to beat them pretty good, but I also think the game's going to be pretty close. But that's a talk for the next couple of days. We'll talk more about Michigan State. But I do think if we beat Michigan State by double digits, I think this is a top 25 team. But when I go through the roster and compare it to past Maryland teams, I was wrong this year, I think. I said that this roster is worse than past Maryland teams. That might not be the case. That might not be the case. A lot of it's going to depend on Billy Edwards, to be completely honest. But there were weeks in the last couple of years where we were in the top 25 or we were right there. And I think this seems fairly similar, if not better. So I think the fact that we're not receiving votes, I think is just, it's not right. I'm not going to act like it's like, oh my gosh, like this is insanely wrong. Like, no, it's not. Like, I do see both sides. I understand why we're not receiving votes. I understand that it was just, we beat UConn 50-7. Like, that's not going to move to take us to the next step. That's not going to allow us to receive votes. It's just not. But I still think that there's plenty of reasons why I think we should be receiving votes. I think that our defense is the best under Coach Loxley. I don't think we've had quite a defense like this, an all-around unit that if they're all on, then that unit has a chance to be one of the best in the Big Ten and one of the top 25 unit in the entire country. And then I think that our weapons, I think Ty Felton has a chance to be one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. Caden Prather's one of the best number 2 receivers in the Big Ten. And Preston Howard and Dylan Wade, who I'll talk about later, when they're healthy, and our running back room. And if Billy Edwards is good, the Maryland Terrapins are going to be in the top 25 this year. And that's what I do believe, because I think our early schedule, if we start off with our later schedule, I'd be like, yeah, this is a team that is going to win some games early. If we reversed our schedule, like take it from week 6 and we just flip-flopped it, I'd be like, it'd be really hard for us to string together 2 wins in a row. Never mind get into the top 25. But with the schedule that we have early on, it might only be a couple more weeks before Maryland gets in the top 25, because some schools just start playing these big games. And yeah, we have some big games against Michigan State and Virginia in the next 2 weeks, but 2 very winnable types of games. So I look at it and I say, if we beat Michigan State, we could be there. If we beat Virginia, we could be there. And then next week against Villanova, if we go in there 3-0, a team we should absolutely win, a lot of stuff could clear up for us to be a top 25 team. And I think that's important to show that we're becoming closer to a top 25 program. And I think that's our goal as a program, a consistent top 25 team when we start to look at it. Like when I think about our recruiting, we're our 25 class with Malik Washington and all those really Messiah Del Home and all those really cool players, Jalen Gilchrist. I look at that and I'm like, okay, our goal is to have a top 25 recruiting class. And I think a similar goal should be for our football program right now in terms of our ranking. Our goal should be to be in the top 25. And I think we're right there. And I think when you bang out top 25 recruiting classes and when you bang out top 25 teams, that's when your program starts to pick up a lot of momentum. So I do think that we will be there, could be there. We will be receiving votes after a win against Michigan State, but I do think we should already be receiving votes. Like UNLV's receiving a vote. Arkansas is receiving 2 votes. Like I know North Carolina beat Minnesota, but like they are receiving 4 votes. it just feels like there's a lot of teams that were right there then, if not better than, that are receiving votes. So I do think the Terps should be a top 25 team, and I do think that they will get there eventually. Maryland gets a huge player back from injury for the Michigan State game. I'll talk about his potential impact after this ad from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you need speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So Maryland gets Quashon Fuller back from injury, and I think that it is really going to help overall the Terps getting Quashon Fuller, the defensive end, back from injury for the Maryland Terrapins. So I talked about it yesterday, and the Maryland defensive line group, they were just decent against UConn, and I kind of expected them to dominate UConn, but they were just a decent group on Saturday at 12. Even though we won 50-7, even though UConn couldn't score on us, if they play that way against Michigan State, it could be a trouble. There wasn't much of a pass rush. There wasn't much getting to the quarterback. Part of it was UConn got the ball out fast a lot, and they really just didn't have a shot at all. But we're going to need more of a pass rush in week 2 against Michigan State. We're going to need to get their quarterback, Aiden Childs. We're going to have to get him way more congested. We're going to have to put pressure on him because that's a talented kid. I don't care how he looked like in week 1 against who did Michigan State play in week 1? They played FAU. No matter how Michigan State looked in week 1 against FAU, and the Aiden kid who was 4-star recruit, originally was at Oregon State, of course, and followed his coach to Michigan State. I don't care if he didn't look that great. I think he's a guy that's really talented. He's a dual threat type of guy. He can throw the football. He's got a powerful arm. And so I think that when you look at a guy like that, you say the number one thing that might get him going is allowing him to get comfortable, not putting pressure on him. But if we get pressure on him, if we get through Michigan State's offensive line, then I could look at him and be like, he could continue to be rattled if we don't let him get his confidence. So I think that getting Quashon Fuller back could be huge for the Terps. You guys know what I'm saying? Like, if we let him to start get his confidence back, then it could be scary, and it could be potentially a lot harder to beat a team like that. But if we stay on him, if we play hard, if we rush him as a passer, don't give him running lanes that we're not supposed to, and we defend the run pretty well, and we don't let him ever get comfortable, then I think that the Terps could be in a good position to stop Aiden Childs. So I think it's an interesting type of game with this new Michigan State program, but I do think Quashon Fuller brings back production that is much needed. He had 3 sacks last year, forced a fumble, 25 total tackles. He's just a presence that really going to help. And with a lot of inexperience now in our pass rush and goop and stuff, it's important to have a guy like this. And I've always have said this about Quashon Fuller. He has all the traits, he has all the speed, he has all the length, he has all those different things to be a really good pass rusher in the Big Ten. For him, it's just about putting it together and just getting to that next level. And I think Quashon hasn't hit his highest level yet. I don't think he has hit his ceiling yet. And I think his ceiling is probably higher than just about every other pass rusher on our team. I like Kellen Wyatt, but I think Quashon Fuller is probably a little bit more talented. I like some of the other guys we have, some of the young guys, but I really do think that Quashon Fuller is a really talented type of guy, and I hope that he's put it together this offseason. It's not like he wasn't good last year. Like I said, he had 3 sacks. He was productive, 25 tackles. He did some really good things. But he should be a guy that could have like 6 sacks, 7 sacks. Like he should be that type of guy. And so I think that when I look at a guy like Quashon Fuller, I'm like, okay, getting him back, and I know he's got a lot to prove. He was our honorable All Big Ten mention last year. Like he's a good player. So he's going to be looking for an All Big Ten bid again. And I think when I think about Michigan State and how their quarterback struggled in week 1, I think getting Quashon Fuller back could be huge. Because listen to this. This is Aiden Child's stat line in week 1 against FAU. He goes 10 of 24 for 114 yards and 2 interceptions. That's pretty awful for a guy like for a 4-star recruit and a starting quarterback for any quarterback. That's a pretty bad stat line. So if Maryland's defensive line unit and the guys in the inside, whether it's Phillips, whether it's Tommy King-Basote, I think Quashon Fuller outside, Kellen Wyatt, whoever it may be, if they let him get comfortable and get going and get his swagger back, it could be a loss. Maryland could lose this game. This isn't UConn where if their quarterback plays really well, they still lose by 14 points. This is Michigan State. If we don't put it together, if it doesn't look right, then we're going to lose the game for the Maryland Terrapins. So I think it's interesting, and I think that the pass rush, and I think getting Quashon Fuller back is extremely important for the Maryland Terrapins. And I'm going to be, and I think that he's going to have a sack in the game. I'll go ahead and say that. But I think that keeping Aiden Childs in his rushing lanes is also going to be something else that is important because he is a guy that I know can run around a little bit. So I think that's another thing that we have to keep an eye on. But I think getting Quashon Fuller back is going to be really important. I think it's big. But I think overall, a defensive line unit, a unit that got a lot of people back, almost everybody back, has to be better on Saturday at 3:30 at Michigan State or at home at the Shell. I think we're going to have to disrupt the Michigan State quarterback and not let him get his confidence back because if he does, it could be scary for the Terps. Maryland could have lost a huge player for the week 2 game against Michigan State. I'll talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, but we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Guys, this is such a good deal on FanDuel. And don't forget, if you want to bet Maryland football this weekend, FanDuel is the place to go. There's so many different spreads in all the different games. If you want to bet Maryland to win, if you want to bet the spread, you can do that on FanDuel. So make sure you guys go check that out. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sports book. So Preston Howard could be out against the Michigan State Spartans, and I think he will be out. And I think this is a storyline that is a pretty big deal for the Terps that I don't know how much attention it's going to get, but it's something that I want to talk about here. Preston Howard only played like 8 or 9 snaps or something like that against UConn. Something's up. I don't know exactly what it is, but Preston Howard isn't healthy, and it sounds like there's a real possibility he doesn't play against Michigan State. This was one of my fears coming into this year was tight end depth because I didn't like it. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think we had a lot of tight end depth. I feel better about it now. I think Dylan Wade is a guy that we could be looking to have a huge game on Saturday. And to be honest, at this point, Dylan Wade might be the better just pure receiving threat than Preston Howard is. But Preston Howard's a little bit bigger, probably a better blocker. He's still 6'6". He's a real red zone threat, and he's still a really good receiving threat. But Dylan Wade seems to have a good connection with Billy Edwards. It looked like that in week one. He caught a couple of passes back to back where I was like, okay, Dylan Wade looks like we expect him to look. So I think that I'm looking at it and I'm saying the Preston Howard loss is still a big deal because we like to run a lot of two tight end sets. We don't like to play guys over the amount that they probably can. We like to give guys rest. We like to sprinkle a lot of different guys in. So I think losing a guy like Preston Howard could definitely hurt. He's the most experienced tight end in that room. He's one of the only ones that is experienced playing a team like Michigan State. Like Dylan Wade, when we've played Michigan State last year, like he didn't play a ton. He didn't play a lot because we had 3 tight ends in front of him. But now he's going to be tight end 1, and I think he's ready for the moment. But I do think it's important. But Dylan Wade isn't why I'm kind of concerned about it. Yeah, he hasn't played in this type of game. He hasn't played a ton. I know last year he got some snaps and some points, but that was when we were really crushing teams. We had Corey Dyches, and of course Preston Howard was tight end 2, and then Rico Walker was a really talented freshman in front of Dylan Wade. But at the end of the day, Dylan Wade looks like the better player than Rico Walker. I'll go ahead and say it. And that's a reminder that stars are not everything, because Rico Walker was like our top rated recruit. And maybe we had him at the wrong position because a lot of people were saying that he should play defensive end, and maybe he should have. But he's at Auburn now, and I don't really know if he did anything in week 1, to be completely honest. But I think Dylan Wade feels like the better option at this point in time. My concern is when we want to run 2 tight end personnel, when we want to run some of those things, bigger, heavier packages, maybe it's a short yardage, whatever it is. I don't know about any of the other tight ends, to be completely honest. AJ Sininsky, great kid, hasn't played a lot, hasn't had to play a lot, and he's going to be a guy that could potentially get a good amount of run in week 2 against Michigan State if Preston Howard is out. I think that's entirely a possibility. And he's young. He's only going into his 2nd year in the program. And then we could look at other guys like Leon Houghton Jr., who's kind of switched from being a receiver to being a bigger tight end. He's a guy that could potentially have a big impact, that could do some big things for the Terps this year. And he could definitely help us a lot. I think that having that switching from receiver, now he's going to be being guarded by guys that are like linebackers. And if he definitely is still got some of that receiver in him, I think he could definitely do something big. Lerone Husbands has been solid for us for a while, but he's never a guy that's really played a lot. So I think when you look at it, it could be an underrated story. But Billy Edwards has shown that he'll throw the ball to Dylan Wade, and so it'll be interesting to see if it has a much of an impact on the game. I don't think it's like win or lose, but I do think that it could affect us, could change our offense. We could have to do a couple different things if Preston Howard is out. If he plays, which I really don't think he will, then it's great. But I also have my thoughts about that, and I have my bad thoughts about that, because it's like, is he fully healthy? Should he be playing? I don't know. So I don't know how to feel about Preston Howard either way. I don't really feel great about it, because either he's playing, but he's probably not 100%, or he's not playing and we don't have one of our top playmakers. But I think buy stock in Dylan Wade. I think that Dylan Wade is a guy that has a chance to be a really good player going into this week, that could have a really big game against Michigan State. I think that they could be worried about. I think the game plan for them is stop Ty Felton, stop Caden Prather, and probably focus on the run game. If Maryland tight ends get going, then so be it. They beat us like that, and that's how we wanted them to beat us. And you got to tip your cap. I think that's what Michigan State's saying. So I think that when you look at it, you could be like, Dylan Wade could get a lot of coverage, could get a lot of open looks that he might not get in a normal type of game. I think that because he's tight end one, hasn't showed a lot. I think that's completely a possibility. I don't think he's going to be like number one on their game plan or their scouting report. I think it's going to be Ty and Caden and some of those receivers, and then Hemby and Nolan Ray. And I think they'll look at Dylan Wade as a good player, but they're going to say, make him beat us. I think that's entirely a possibility. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.